What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here to take a look at the Detroit Lions' 48-45 loss at home in Week 4 to the Seattle Seahawks, a game that turned into a shootout. Don't know how many people thought that was going to happen. The over-under, I believe, was set at 48.5. Seattle scored 48 by themselves. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this game after rewatching it for the first time. So let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
And welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and we're back with our, you could call this initial reactions, really our takeaways video from this game. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of specifics, like for example, like showing specific plays and breaking them down like we do the all 22 videos. That'll probably happen again this week. I plan to do that, especially on the defensive side of the ball for sure. So I don't want to do all of that in this video. This video will be forever. However, ooh, that was kind of fire. Y'all like that? However, we do have some things that we need to touch on after rewatching this. And this was one of those games where, you know, they always say, like, okay, let's talk about the defense. Of course, we gave up, 41 points defensively, 48 as a whole. But you know when they say, like, okay, you're never as bad as you thought you were, but you're also never as good as you thought you were either. Well, that's kind of the truth, I think, in this one, because this was absolutely horrendous defensively. And that's not to say that it wasn't. It still was. But I also think it was specifically because you didn't really know where to point the finger. I mean, that's what this one felt like. It was kind of all over the place. When you give up that many points, when the opposing team does not punt, they missed a field goal. When they do not punt, it's like, where do we even point the finger at this one? And there wasn't like a standout where it's like, this guy keeps getting killed. Certain guys got beat, I think, more than others for sure. But there wasn't a standout there. Like last week against Amani, the majority of people allotted the blame because of all his illegal contact penalties, right? And we left him on some islands there. Okudah had help on Justin Jefferson, and he struggled against Thielen. That one was kind of more like, oh, okay, we can see what happened. This game was all over the place. So you start pointing fingers everywhere. And I think, honestly, the truth is that the fingers can be pointed pretty much everywhere after rewatching this. And I've seen some of the all 22 of the defense. Offense, I've just seen, the normal standard version and took notes on those plays. But the defense, I think you can point in different places because there were a lot of issues from a lot of different areas, and the Lions are going to have to change things up for sure going forward. According to Dan Campbell, he's felt like their football intelligence is an issue right there. Certain guys, we just got to get out there, and they need to trust each other. Potentially some personnel changes going forward, but the main thing is he said they need to get confidence back in their players, pull back potentially a little bit on their scheme. We've heard that before. It was like, man, we need some more confidence defensively, and if you think about it, when they first came here, that was one thing that they talked about. This entire defense is like, hey, we got to put the confidence in these guys. We got to allow them to play fast. And now Campbell thinks they potentially have to pull it back a little bit, being in the right position. And now they're thinking too much and they're not trusting each other to be where they're supposed to be. They've been talking about this for weeks. They believe that this is a main issue with the defense. And Campbell does feel like the talent is there defensively, which to me, yes, we are missing some pieces. Okay. And getting John Kaminsky back is going to be big time, or Josh Paschal, to me, honestly, because there are examples in there. And I think you feel it most when you're in an obvious passing down and the interior push just isn't there the same. I think that's where you feel it, right? Especially when the Lions play man coverage. You're not getting that instant pressure from the inside like you can get sometimes on the edge. You're putting Hutch on the edge and you're putting Charles on the edge, but you're not getting guys that are getting movement consistently. Aleem McNeil's getting the most pressure from the interior seemingly, and it's like that guy's usually not even on the field. Michael Brockers isn't winning his one-on-ones against a guard, and he never does that. So I feel like that's where you're really feeling, missing that guy, John Kaminsky, or Josh Paschal potentially play that role. But with that being said, it's not like your talent is so far off that you cannot stop Seattle. I mean, that's just not true. But with that being said, I think Seattle did a lot of things good to us schematically. They attacked us in a lot of really clever ways, while at the same time, I think they also posed some threats to opposing defenses. And I can't say this for certain because I haven't seen enough of Seattle versus other teams film. I didn't get much time this past week. But just because of some of their personnel that they had, you could see how that clearly affected the Lions schematically and how Seattle was able to take advantage of that. And really look at Geno Smith coming in this game. He had the highest completion percentage in the National Football League. I think I kind of see why probably that's the case, just based on the type of players they have, and then the offense they run around that. And then as Dan Campbell said, well, we know when we get them in second and long situations where they're not very good, that's where we have to take advantage. Well, unfortunately for the Lions, they didn't get into a lot of second and long positions defensively. They got too few, and a lot of times they didn't make the plays, but they didn't get into a lot of those because first down, they allowed multiple chunks. Third down defensively, they allowed 7 of 12, which is not very good. To kind of touch on some of of the, the overall basic stuff here. We'll touch on the offense probably more at the end. But of course, yes, there were a couple of mistakes that put the defense in a couple of tough spots, right? I mean, you had the Khalif fumble at basically midfield to set Seattle up at their own 48, and that led to a field goal attempt. That's not great for the defense. You had a kickoff right off the score that went straight out of bounds, sets them up at their own 40. That's not ideal. Okay, those two things do not help your defense. It puts you in a bad spot for sure. And then of course the pick 6, which makes it basically only give up 41 points in this game, which again, this is a team that scores 15 a game. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, man, that pick 6 got us. Like, nah, realistically, you can't give up 41 points to a team that scores 15. All right, if we're playing Kansas City, I can point heavier to that because I'm like, this kind of the game you expected. Not when you're playing this team. At the beginning of the third quarter, like the offense after that started scoring like pretty much every single drive, and you still couldn't get out the field when you needed to one time. So I'm not going to point to that one pick and say that's what got us in this one. One thing that I think was actually not bad, but of course it's not going to get attention, and it really doesn't deserve to get attention because you played bad defensively, is I didn't think the Lions were bad at all against a lot of those zone runs. The outside zone they continued to go to, some of the inside zones they went to. They had a couple that kicked out like cutbacks, and they had like a jet sweep to Kenneth Walker that got 13 yards. They had a couple of those plays, but aside from some of their monster chunks that they picked up schematically beating us, when it came down to could our defensive line get penetration and fill lanes as linebackers, they're actually really good in that area, where I think the Lions did what we anticipated coming in, is that their defensive line, the interior, was better than their offensive line basically on paper, and I think the Lions showed that a majority of the game. The one play where you really pointed and you're like, well, there wasn't, was honestly at the worst time. It was the 3rd and 5 at the end of the game where Isaiah Buggs gets walled off and they allow a free offensive lineman to get to Alex Anzalone, and they pick up the block and they get a first down. All right, aside from that play, the Lions were really darn good, like 0 yards, -1 yard, 3 yards. Like that's what they were allowing against those runs. But unfortunately, a lot of the good stops there for the defense because there wasn't a ton of good outside of that. And I think there's a lot of things that are having issues here. You talk about personnel. If they're going to look to change up personnel, two things that come to mind for me, a couple things do, but one thing specifically, you look at the safety position. The Detroit Lions started Kirby Joseph in this game. I still don't understand why they started Kirby. No one asked him that. I don't know why they did it. All right, now I'm not going to say like I hate it because, okay, that was your 3rd round pick. You don't have Tracy. I understand Juju may have made a mistake on the last play we looked at against Minnesota, but for a majority of the game, he wasn't like breaking down. He was actually doing a lot of good for us, being in a lot of good spots for us defensively. He's doing a lot of good. I know he's undersized and he's limited in certain areas, but to look at, okay, well, Tracy Walker, you lost him and what kind of impact that had, I think it had a massive impact, but you didn't really feel that when he went out when Juju Hughes stepped in. So you decide this week to start Kirby Joseph. I don't completely understand that. There were some breakdowns, okay? The obvious one is the touchdown where there was like no communication between him and Amani and no one passed it off. They end up both covering the slant flat, easy wide open touchdown. That's the obvious one. Of course, the touchdown that he gave up man coverage. I'm not saying Juju would have made a play on that because again, he's undersized, so that's not really the matchup that you want. He made a great tackle in open space on a 3rd down that ended up forcing a field goal attempt, and I think they actually missed that field goal attempt. I do think that when you rewatch it, like there were still a lot of the Lions were trying to disguise coverage. I thought they were being very vanilla and basic. I don't think that was the case. I think the Lions continue to move things around, continue to try to disguise in coverage and things like that. But I think what really showed up as an issue first off, and this is some credit to Seattle and the personnel that they have, you clearly saw the impact of what it kind of led Aaron Glenn to do defensively with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. The Lions really did like 3 things against them to try to slow them down. Okay, the first thing was similar to last week. If they played man coverage, a lot of times they would put 2 deep safeties, and one would help out on Tyler Lockett, specifically when he was in the slot, and the other would help out on DK Metcalf if he's on the outside, whether that's Amani or Okuda. So if they're going to play that, they would put help. Now, if they're not going to put help, a lot of times what they would do is a couple things. They would play soft zone coverage. So it would either be, if it's a one-on-one, even if it's man, they'd play soft man. They give him like 7-8 yard cushion off the line of scrimmage on the outside. Whether that was Amani, usually it was Amani. Like, you look at the quick RPO slant they hit, look how much cushion he's giving on this play. There's really no shot on this. You're kind of just giving him that, which I think is an impact directly to why Geno's completion percentage is so high, and credit to Seattle to just being like, dude, we're just going to take those passes. Why not? And the Lions did a lot of like cover 6 looks defensively, where they try to keep that safety over top to have an underneath zone coverage defender, a safety over top of DK, and you're in a way kind of like bracketing him, but you're just playing zone coverage. Well, of course, every zone coverage has a hole, and when you're playing cover 6 like that, the opposite side, they hit us a couple times. Cornerback, like there was one on Okuda, where you have a cornerback and safety, where the cornerback's not going to dive down on it, he kind of passes off to the safety. Well, if the safety's got too much depth, which I think happened once on Deshaun Elliott, there's one on Kirby Joseph, where it's like, man, they're getting a lot of depth here. They're not even in a position where they can actually make a play on the football. You do that, then of course, they're going to beat those types of coverages. And then that led them to going at, some of the soft zone coverage we were playing, where you look at the out route, right? Lions get a negative play on first down. I think it was a holding call. Now it's 1st and 20, and they throw an out route, picked up 11 yards on Jeff Okudah, so it puts him in 2nd and 9. That's manageable immediately, but that's because Okudah's playing like a cover 2 drop. He's dropping and getting depth up the seam. Then he run this out route, and he sits down, and he picks up 11 yards. So I think the Lions, when you looked at it defensively schematically, there wasn't very often where they were like, hey, put him on an island with DK or put him on an island with Lockett and let him just play one-on-one. And unfortunately for the Lions, when they did that, a couple times they got burnt. And that was Okudah. A couple times he got burnt. Now, the first one was clear and obvious. It was like, dude, he got toasted. The second one, I thought he was in a position, pretty good position. He ended up just not making a play on the football. But that's football. That happens. He came back, had a pass breakup, crosser and man coverage. That was a good play. You know, that's what happens, right? And I think you felt that impact because the Lions didn't trust to go to that very often. They tried to put help or they would play soft zone or whatever, and that led to them getting some easy completions. Other thing, which I feel like schematically, and we'll probably point this out more during the week, was clear, is I thought Seattle did a great job of knowing our tendencies, 1. But number 2, attacking our alignments pre-snap. The Lions do a lot of post-snap movement, right? We know about this. They may show a safety in a box snap, but here goes safety, he drops out. Well, Seattle did a good job, I think, a lot of times of attacking just what we gave them pre-snap. I think sometimes we gave it kind of a tell. Perfect example in this game. When Malcolm Rodriguez goes to the edge, we're blitzing. It was kind of just like that. Like if he lines up on the edge and there's one off-ball linebacker and he slides down and gets to the edge, you're blitzing. There's also the double A gap blitz, or when the Lions put 2 guys on the interior of the line of their linebackers, they walk them up on the line. The Lions have done this since Aaron Glenn's got here. Dan Campbell basically said it like, yeah, they got us. You know, those are the first 2 times they got us. I wouldn't say those are the first 2 times they got us. Okay, I saw it, you know, already this season. I think it was Philly. I don't remember. It was one of the games this season. Maybe it was Minnesota, where we showed that same look, and it didn't matter if our linebackers dropped or not because they ended up just running like a quick slant with 2 vertical routes from the 2 slot receivers. And he ended up picking up a first down because your linebackers can drop or they can blitz. You're not going to get there fast enough to cover that. When you do that, Seattle in this game, specifically the 2 touchdowns, they were like, yeah, we're just going to attack what they're doing. Like, we're just going to, look, we don't care if they drop or not. You're lined up here when we snap it. So when we snap it, it won't matter. This is how you're lined up. We're going to attack that. So you take a look at the first one. Now, this one, I would say the first time around was going to work. You know, you showed it, you blitzed, he threw it incomplete. They end up giving the play back, whatever. They get another 3rd and 16 opportunity. The Lions came out and did the same thing. Now, I don't even remember if their coverage was different or not, but they gave the same pre-snap alignment. That's one of those examples where I'm like, okay, you probably should have did something different because they just saw that. You basically, unfortunately, you got a free chance to look at our defense, but now you probably have to mix it up. And you can still blitz, but maybe just show it a little bit differently. No, the Lions showed the same thing. And Seattle's like, okay, well, let's just pull our offensive lineman. And then guess what? When we pull that offensive lineman, you're outnumbered. We pick up that block. There's no one back there because you brought everybody on the line. So they did that. They come back later. They pull 2 offensive linemen. They go to a pull 2. And they do the exact same thing. Deshaun Elliott sees zone on his side, basically. So he jumps out of the play. Him taking off lets Chris Borda diving inside. And now you're outnumbered. You're pulling 2 offensive linemen. You have Deshaun Elliott take off to, worry about the quarterback. He sees zone blocking right in front of him, but they're pulling 2 offensive linemen around. So you're going to run over there, but you're just out. You got like 3 defenders over there because they already pulled 2 offensive linemen away. So now you're outnumbered again. And it's an easy touchdown for the running back on opportunities to get off the field. Specifically, that 3rd and 16 was a massive backbreaker. They may not even be able to make a field goal from there. He already missed 1. That was a massive backbreaker to give up a touchdown in that position. I think we were down 7 at the time. So there were a couple of those were credit to Seattle. But even beyond that, I feel like they did a good job with like, okay, here's what the Lions are showing. You saw a lot of the pre-snap adjustments they were making. When the Lions would give them some kind of look offensively, they would attack it. And I think sometimes it worked out for them, and maybe they didn't really know that was going to work out. Maybe they did. Like you look at the toss where Deshaun Elliott literally, as soon as he snapped it, dropped back because he was trying to show and then drop and rotate in coverage. Well, when he immediately dropped when they tossed it there, now he left this hole. You're outnumbered, and he just ran free for like 15 yards. Elliott ended up tripping up. I don't know how much you could do about that defensively if you're going to try to disguise, and I don't have a problem with it, but it worked out. However, you look at like the quarterback draws, those were perfect play calls. They were perfect play calls. Like they were a step ahead of us is what they felt like all game. When you run out a quarterback draw and the Lions jump into man coverage, you look at the red zone touchdown, right? You're in man coverage, cover 1. So you have a safety that's going to slide to the left and help in coverage, which they were doing all game. So they could have been a little bit prepared for that. And then Malcolm is going to slide to his left side. So now you run this quarterback draw. There's no shot. You got no chance. This man coverage. No one's looking at the quarterback. He just walks into the end zone. It's like sometimes they just took advantage of some of the looks that we had defensively. Now, I look at this play in particular, and I go back to personnel again. Do the Lions consider looking at another defensive back in some of these formations. Put a linebacker in the slot. Of course, when he's playing man, they got to put help. So in zone, it's fine. But when the Lions play man coverage and they have a linebacker on a slot, which they have done in the past, and they've done it multiple times, they did it a couple times in this game. When they do that, now a safety's got to direct his attention there. And I guess if you're like, hey, we don't care, even if there was a corner there, we're going to double anyway, then it doesn't matter, don't worry about it. But if you feel like potentially you could put a cornerback there and you could trust him to hold the one-on-ones, now you can leave a little bit more help to worry about the quarterback, especially a guy like Geno who can run a little bit. Now maybe that helps you out a little bit more. So is that a personnel thing? Is that Will Harris? Is that if Jerry Jacobs gets back, do you start to look at him potentially that could help us in different areas, right? Like in a slot position in some spots as like a, just extra defense back iffy. Like do you consider that at certain times? And then the play action bootlegs, which were just, they kind of just stick with you. Now, I don't think it was as bad as I remember because we actually made a couple plays against it. When we went to cover 3, usually they beat us. And I think they did very creative looks. Like sometimes they did like 3 tight end sets, and it was very difficult for us to cover all of those. Ani's carried up the field by basically the seam route, and then you have Alex Anzalone, who basically ends up in this play in no man's land. There was another example where Malcolm Rodriguez, for whatever reason, just paused, and I don't know if that's a trusting. I think that's just for whatever reason he thought something was going to happen. He did that one time last week too, where you have like the beneath route, he's on it, and then he stops, and he creates separation. I don't know why he did that, but it's like, why did he stop on the play? And as we said, I think they did a better job as the game went on against. This is another zone coverage drop. This time, however, Julian doesn't carry up. He tries to help out on this beneath route. Maybe if you could get some contact, that would help slow this thing up so Malcolm can get out there. Alex takes the crosser. Amani plays tighter and carries up the seam immediately. So it's an adjustment. It's better, but it's still a completion. But the Lions did try to adjust. This is the same look as before. Now, this look was a little different for the offense. They did this on the safety side. So you can see Elliott's going to help on the tight end here, and Malcolm's going to be able to race out into this flat. But for whatever reason, he holds up and pauses there looking at the quarterback and loses the receiver. He got out there a lot quicker. Julian wasn't in his way, so he was able to sprint out, but he shouldn't have stopped. So I don't think it was as bad. Like, again, Okudah had a pass break on one of these. But when the Lions usually went to cover 3, usually they were converting when they went to these play action boot plays. There was good too. And again, we talk about linebacker being on a slot. There was good too. Like there was ones where Lions would play zone and they would end up matching up. It led to the intentional grounding and everybody matched up in this zone coverage. Look, it looks like defensively, it looks like man basically. But you have a slot, you have Derek Barnes on DK Metcalf in the slot. Everybody matches up, forces an intentional grounding call. Right, so it's like, okay, that was good. Go back to having DK and Lockett. That's a tough matchup. It is, and again, I think there's a reason why the completion percentage was so high. So I understand it. But I think, especially when you come back to personnel decisions, you look at Amani. And I think what I do is, I'm not saying I'm just benching Amani when Jerry's back. Like, not like that, even though I think Jerry, if Jerry is last year, I would prefer Jerry, I think, on the field. And that's, no hate to Amani. I like Amani. I just think he's a better coverage corner. But with that being said, I think for the Lions, the way that they can look at it specifically is that when Jerry's healthy, if he's healthy sooner rather than later, that'd be awesome. Is specifically in matchups. Like this game, the Lions put Okudah seemingly a lot more on Metcalf, but there was a mix there. But if you're going to do things like that, and for the Lions, where I think you're running into an issue is like this game, where you had Okudah on DK, whether it'd help or not, then you would put Amani on Lockett. Amani's already not the most sticky coverage corner. Now you put a smaller receiver that's twitchy, that's, tough to defend. Ever they would try to play man with that, Amani basically stood no chance. He might have some good reps in there, and we've seen good from him in the past. Look at Thielen last week, gave him a lot of problems. He's been good, but to me, Amani, like you look at the past when he's good, like AJ Green, he was awesome against AJ Green against Arizona last year. But that's the kind of matchup that suits him. He's not very twitchy, he's a big receiver, so that works for him. So I think the Lions will have to start thinking about where matchups are we actually putting him in, and you don't have a lot of flexibility now, unless they want to go to Will Harris, but they don't, clearly, until Jerry gets back. Once Jerry's back and healthy, if he looks like Jerry of last year, or hopefully even better, if you get that, now I think you can start to consider, like, okay, hold up. If we want to play this man coverage and we want to Okudah on this guy, then if we have Jerry Jacobs, that could allow us to feel much more comfortable playing these man coverage things, because for Amani, certain matchups just do not go well with him. Some just don't, and that's okay. And that's the type of corner that he is, right? We understand what he is. I think the Lions should understand by now what he is. So I think you have to start to consider that a little bit, because like in this game against Lockett, on paper, if I have Jerry of last year versus Amani, I'm starting Jerry. And it's easy to say that in hindsight, but if that's the matchup I'm looking to get, I'm putting Jerry in that game because of size. I think he matches up better. Again, we talked about Jerry against Minnesota last year. He absolutely did outstanding against Adam Thielen. He was great against Adam Thielen. So I think that's something that they have to consider. That's not to say bench Amani, don't play him again. But I think especially when you start talking about matchups, you have to consider that heavily. And I think it absolutely should be something the Lions look to do if Jerry can come back and be healthy. And according to Dan, his clock's going to start starting this week as he's cleared to practice. They also said Josh Pascal's, near. That's a guy that could be close as well. And again, if he gets back, now it goes to another question, which was brought up today, is Aiden Hutchinson. The Lions potentially looking to move him a little bit more to the open side of the formation, basically giving him less tight end looks. And I think that specifically shows up on early downs, but when they're in some of their base packages, where if you're not having a tight end consistently across from you, which right now they're doing it because of size reasons, Charles being the strong side defender versus having that be Hutchinson, just makes more sense body type wise to have Hutchinson do that. But if you get Pascal back, I don't think you want to take Charles off the field. But if Pascal, and I think he could be this in the future for sure, I think this is a vision for him, as Rad has said in the past, is that he could be kind of that strong side defensive end. I think he can do that. And then Hutch can go to the weak side. And now you have two bigger bodies out there, and Hutch doesn't have to worry about the tight end consistently on early downs. That's something you could consider, and it can lead to specifically like when you go play action on early downs. A lot of times we got a tight end, it makes it very difficult to pass rush, or at least slows down your pass rush. When you're one-on-one, you can kind of just get after it. So that's something to think about. But at the same time, they may just switch it regardless with Charles. And on top of that, yes, it could allow him to play a little bit more stand-up if that's something he's comfortable with. We know he said he liked playing stand-up more at Michigan than being hand in the dirt, but because of the role he's playing, he kind of has to play in dirt. He can't really play stand-up, according to Dan Campbell, based on where he's at on the field. So that's another thing. I doubt they go that direction, but it's something to look for, is potentially Hutchinson in different matches. Because again, I'm not going to go into specifics here. Hutchinson didn't play a bad game. But again, it kind of was almost like the Georgia-Michigan game in college. They did a great job of taking him out of the football game, and how do you do that? Well, you run the football, you run it away from him, you play action boot away from him, which is what they did a lot. You double team because he's always got a tight end on him. You do what they did. When you play that kind of game that they did, it's tough, and you're getting no rhythm as a pass rusher. Me, I like Charles, but there are times where you're like, he needs to win more often. Charles started winning in this game at one point, but he needs to win more often than he is, be a little bit more dominant than he is, I think is what the Lions are thinking. Right now, what you're not having with an interior pass rush, specifically in obvious pass downs, because Kaminsky's out, because you don't got Pascal, when one of those two get back, I think that changes. But because you don't have that now, those edge rushers have to get some pressure. Dan Campbell emphasized getting them in second and long and how that could be a big part of this game. Unfortunately for the Lions, they didn't get a lot of those opportunities in this game. 2nd and 1. That's not great, right? That's off a 9-yard play action completion. All right, 2nd and 3. We end up forcing no gain, but even when you do that, now it's 3rd and 3. That's still extremely manageable. These are second downs in order. 2nd and 2. Which was another incomplete pass, but it's only 3rd and 2. 2nd and 10. That's great, but guess what? Hutchinson jumps offside, so now it's 2nd and 5. So there you go. You got an opportunity, but you jump off sides. Penalties on both sides of the ball, really watching it back, were frustrating, especially on the defense side of the ball, because it felt like when we had a chance, it was like, oh, there you go. And then you have like one on Isaiah Buggs where you give up this huge completion, and Isaiah Buggs gets called for roughing the passer, whether you like it or not. It adds more yards. Now they're at the 9-yard line immediately. You didn't have more penalties than Seattle. Offensively, you had somewhere. To me, I felt like sometimes it's just offensive line get beat. I thought Skipper showed some struggles in this game. I thought they went at him in this game with some stunts, but he struggled in this game, which is understandable. And at one point, they had to put their backup right guard in. There were some that was just like, okay, holdings, these guys are getting beat a little bit. Some, like the Sewell one, when Goff is still in the pocket, it's like, man, he can't be holding there, right? He doesn't need to hold there. And then there was also a couple of false starts where, again, you're like, dude, Brock Wright, Penei Sewell, you guys should not be doing this. You guys are better than that. So we did have some of those offensively that hurt. Let's continue with the 2nd down. 2nd down and 5. The next drive, they didn't even have a 2nd down. They had multiple chunk plays, 3 straight chunk plays that led to first down. That's where I started looking at the coverage and how far we're playing off. And again, I give Seattle credit because I felt like they attacked our tendencies and our coverage well. They had a feel for what we were going to do against what we were seeing, and especially early in the game. I think they did a really good job attacking our zone coverage. I think they did a great job of that and giving us in some issues where it's like, oh, you're playing this coverage, well, we're going to give you this. And it's like, yeah, it's a young safety, but I can't just put it on him. That's just a good play design. Carroll, this staff's been around for a long time. Geno Smith has played some football. They did a great job at the line, giving him opportunities to adjust. And at the same time, they did a great job coming in with a game plan based on what we wanted to do. And as the game went on and flowing and adjusting to what we did, where they just felt like they were a step ahead of us a lot of the game. 2nd and 14. That's great. Now this one, Okudah just gets beat one-on-one, 54 yards. You try to say, okay, we're not going to put help this time. We're gonna not do that. We're going to leave him one-on-one on an island. Well, he gets beat for 54 yards. And again, that happens sometimes against great receivers. He's a great receiver. Sometimes that goes down. So I understand that. All right, you have a 2nd and 11, and that's awesome. You hold him to a 1-yard run on 2nd and 11. You're doing what you need to do. It's 3rd and 10, and you end up getting off the field because Kirby Joseph, gets the stop. 2nd and 12, DK Metcalf picks up 11. What happened here? Well, you can see Geno, great play by him. He ends up moving Alex Anzalone in the zone coverage, and they pick up 11 yards on that play. And you could see the type of coverage the Lions were trying to run to not allow some things. And you could say zone blitz, but then, you're even creating more holes in the defense. Give credit to Kirby here. I'm not saying Kirby had a terrible game. You can see he's actually at a pretty good spot cutting off this dig route. But there are holes in this zone coverage. You see how much depth that safety is getting at the bottom, like this, where Elliott starts to cheat inside. This could be one of those trust things. And then it's basically a one-on-one with Amani, but he's got no one to kind of exchange this with. And those deep curls, those deep digs can be an issue. They're 2nd and 10, which leads to a holding. So now it's 2nd and 20. Okay, here's a great opportunity for your defense. You give up 16 yards to Tyler Lockett. All right, and this is one of those, cover 6 type of looks where you got the 4 on that side of the field where you kind of have 2 guys that should be passing it off, you would think, but Deshaun is almost playing upfield more, and there is none of that. Could this be one of the things where Dan's talking about not having confidence? You do notice Amani at the top of this route stumble, as we saw that last week. He just does not look like he's under control. Maybe just not being a little bit more aggressive, but again, he doesn't look like he's under control here. 2nd and 6, which leads to intentional grounding. This was a good coverage play, and because of that, you got to stop, you get off the field. Later, 2nd and 10, the Lions decide, hey, we're going to bring a blitz. Now, these, to me, sometimes I don't understand these, I'm not going to, go into all these right now, but these sometimes don't make sense. And this has happened a couple times where we'll blitz a cornerback and he's so far away from the play. It's how do you expect him to even impact this play? This is one of those where I'm okay, I kind of get it, but I don't at the same time. Why even blitz Deshaun Elliott here? He is so far away from the football where I don't even know how he would get to the quarter. I guess if we don't get the blitz, and maybe if he holds on the ball forever, but you're not really anticipating that. He's playing 20 yards off the ball, and you're playing a man in the back end. You can't be anticipating he's just going to hold on to the football, right? So why even blitz Elliott? Why not just utilize him and help in coverage? He could help on Amani on this play, but Amani gets beat one-on-one. It's tough, right? You anticipate that he should be at least tighter in coverage. It wasn't a great throw, but why is Deshaun Elliott even blitzing here? But again, that goes back to the whole Jerry Jacobs thing. But we'll have to dive into that more during the week. It was bad. I don't think it looked like, wow, we are just completely out-talented, outmatched here. We weren't getting bullied on the offensive line. Not at all. I thought we actually kind of won that battle. But they had a great game plan. I think schematically they were on top of things. I think the Lions had some hesitations. They let some things happen. They got some dumb flags, but it was really bad. So we'll have to dive into that more. Offensively, I won't spend much time here. I thought the Lions were pretty darn good. I mean, clearly they had some mistakes. I thought the penalties were killers. And a couple times we had some massive conversions we were at a 2nd and 23, and he ended up finding late in the play. Great play design, deep crossing route to Tom Kennedy, who picked up a first down. That was awesome. That was a huge pickup, and it was a huge swing in the game. We needed that, right? And that drive before half was outstanding to get a touchdown. The missed extra points are not great. That's not awesome, to go in down by 9. Didn't end up really mattering because we got a 2-point conversions. I thought offensively we were actually pretty good. Jamal was consistent. Jamal had no negative run plays that I can remember. I think he had one that went for 0 yards. He was consistently getting positive yardage. Ben Johnson continues to do a great job of, to me, putting Goff in a great spot where it's okay, hey, everything's coming into your field of vision, putting you in a good spot, to find the open guy. Josh Reynolds was huge. I think TJ Hawkinson did a lot for him. If you want to get paid, hey, when we need you, because clearly the design was we're going to try to get you involved, he stepped up. And I think that huge catch and run for 81 yards was, that said a lot, because it wasn't just take what's there and pick it up. And because that was after another negative play. You ended up picking up, I think it was after a flag, you ended up picking up 81 yards on that play as the tight end. That's huge. It was a nice play design, another crosser, and he picks up 81 yards, making the play with the ball in his hands. But that's what he's supposed to do. If you want to be a hot topic tight end, you got to make plays beyond what's just there, and that's what these guys are paid to do. And if he's going to get paid, he's got to do that. He's looked at as that guy, so be that guy, be the 8th pick, and that was an awesome play. A lot of credit to him. And Ben Johnson, finding a way to try to get him the football, especially as the game went on. I thought they settled in really well. What we're seeing is Goff's understanding of this offense and comfortability and confidence is advancing really fast. Of course, his great play designing, it really is. But Goff with pressure, it's advancing from last year, where it was finding answers with pressure in his face, knows where to get the football, knows where he needs to roll to, making things happen off schedule starting last week. This was the throw of the day for Goff to me. I mean, with on-top leverage, you wouldn't have thrown that pass last year. That is just money, confidence in your guys, but also great play design, right? You got guys like Kennedy, Cephas not even in there the whole time. And it's just everybody, they're making it work. It's awesome play designing, but it's also even down to the little passes to Craig Reynolds, where Craig Reynolds is leaking out of the backfield, there's pressure, and he comes across the field to check it down to pick up about 15 yards and get out of bounds. It's knowing where everything is on the field and having a great feel in this offense. It is developing fast, and it's awesome to see it. This is an X and O's game. We know that, and Ben Johnson has done a fantastic job, and I love to see that Goff is he's taken such a massive step. Goff was playing good football again. Ben Johnson has been a great job of doing creative things, again, like attacking tendencies, and we'll look at this more, but like, hey, goal line, they played man for the last 3 plays. Okay, we're going to play a man beater this next play. We're going to get a wide open TJ Hawkinson or a Justin Jackson into the flat, right? Like things like that. His designs in the red zone are awesome. The zone read that they ended up doing, I don't know if I love the rollouts. Those never seem to work for us, but there's a lot of good there. We ran the ball pretty darn well. It's just the flags and the couple of turnovers were bad. The pick golf through, he just threw it late. It was the same corner that was in coverage. Hawkinson's not fast enough to continue to separate. He shouldn't have threw that ball. He threw it late. There's not many weapons when you do that, when you run that kind of play, and the Lions didn't have any weapons, so they had to adjust, which is why you saw a guy like Khalif in the backfield at the beginning of the game. They tried it. They kind of got out of it. They're like, all right, this isn't working. But they tried it, so I respect them for trying it. The third down they didn't pick up to Khalif. It's because the guard was beat immediately. Goff had to get rid of the football, and that happened a few times in this game. Like the wheel he threw to Khalif, the slot fade, is because there was an immediate pass rush. He had to just put it up there. Consistently taking sacks. I think he took 1 sack. Off the top of my head, I should look at the stats, but I think he took 1. But he's not taking sacks. He's taking care of the football for the most part. Yeah, he threw a pick 6, but that's football, man. You can't give up that many points. I look at the one where he grounded it, throwing it to Hawkinson. We're in his 2-minute drill. 1, you don't waste time, and 2, why even force that check down pass? He just throws it at the ground. Now, he probably made a bad decision chucking it up to Khalif. That probably wasn't the best decision, all right, but it fell incomplete. That's what happens. They had the little underneath one that the edge rusher dropped out, and he almost picked it off, and, that's just a little hot. They kind of hide that from the quarterback. He doesn't see it, but I think there's just a lot of good play design that's going on here from the Lions, and I think you see them adjust. Their offensive line, though, is getting pushed in the run game, usually consistently. I thought Jamal had a really good day, aside from the 2 drops, because there was that, too. We had a few drops in this game. Specifically, Jamal had 2 big drops in this game, but we ended up still figuring it out. And really, when they got pinned back, whether it was a 4th down or was like that 4th and 10 we picked up to Tom Kennedy, like that's crucial, man. You got your backs against the wall. The game is on this play, and you pick it up. You look calm. It looked like no issue, man. We're doing much better seemingly against the blitz, knowing where to go with the football. Like the offense is doing its job. I mean, to think that we just scored that many points, I don't think I would have expected that our offense would actually be this good right now. And with the weapons that we had, that's why I can't point and just be like, well, the defense got no talent. Like, no, that's not true, because they've been good in spurts. Seattle, I think schematically, they beat us in this game, and they took advantage, and they were on top of everything we wanted to do, and I also think they had good weapons, and they utilized that, and it hurt us as well. It doesn't sound like an excuse, but we do know that it's a matchup game in the NFL, and I think Seattle matched up with us well, just like they did last year when they dropped 50 on us. I think schematically they just matched up well this week, but we still need things that we got to figure out, because there were still a lot of issues that could have been better on our end. With that, though, again, offensively, what we're doing with some of the pieces that we have, it's this coaching staff, man, and Ben Johnson has been outstanding. But I think offensively, Ben Johnson is making it work. With whatever he's got on the field, he's finding a way to make it work. And our offense is talented, but you got 2 backup guards in there. At one point, you had to put a 3rd-string guard in there, because Evan Brown went out. 3 receivers at one point. Cephas went down in that game. Khalif went down at one point in that game after the fumble. And they're still doing what you're doing offensively. There was no Swift. There was no DJ Chark. All right, there's really no deep threat, right? There's not that speedy guy out there. You put up what? Like, that's very impressive what he did schematically. So I won't spend too much time there, but I thought the offense was great, and I think you just got to look at it and say, man, the defense has to be better. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts, comments below. We're going to dive into more of the All-22 throughout the week. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.